Hi, everybody. I hope you're all doing great. I really was enjoying that music. And then I dropped my computer and the other one is not working now. So I'm on a whole new system. So note to self, don't get carried away in Costa Rica. That's what you need to take away from this. So welcome. Welcome back. So glad to see everybody here again. I just want to reintroduce myself for those of you who don't know me. I'm Refried Dardarian. I'm a professor of nutrition sciences at Drexel University, and I'm the sports nutritionist for USA Field Hockey, US Squash, the Philadelphia Union, and the Philadelphia Flyers. Go Flyers. We were just talking about today. Well, number one, the game is canceled tonight. And secondly, there's a new general manager for the Pittsburgh Penguins, Ron Hextall. Yes. I was there the day that Ron Hextall left the Flyers, and it was a very, very sad day. And that man can give a good handshake. That's what I have to say about Ron. Good guy. So I'm sorry, but I'm going to now lift this off to Dr. Eric Zolmer.
Yeah, hi everybody. It's great to see the great goalie in Pittsburgh. Well, that's going to be a great rivalry. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Eric Zolmer. I'm a professor of neuropsychology. I'm also the director of athletics at Drexel University, and go Dragons. It's so great to be back, Nari. This is our third session. I'm really getting used to it. In fact, you know what? I actually have a new title.
Oh, okay. What is that?
I'm going to, after this is all over, I'm going to be a professional lifestyle curator of the mind. Don't you like it?
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Are you ready for the next stage of our trip? Are you ready, everyone, to go to Costa Rica? But before we head off to Costa Rica, thanks, Cindy. Love that thumbs up. I love that. Okay, so before we head off to Costa Rica, I think that it's our tradition to say goodbye to where we just were. So just a real quick recap of Okinawa. What are some of the things, Eric, that you remember from our trip to Okinawa?
Yeah, let's do it. I love Okinawa. It was a great trip. You see here, that's a tea house, except that one's in Fairmount Park in Philadelphia. But it's a secret tropical destination hotspot. I think it's something that maybe people want to get in their bucket list. And what about, just before we go to Costa Rica, Nairi, what sticks out as one or two things that you remember best in terms of why people live long, healthy lives in Okinawa?
I think one of my favorite takeaways from Okinawa is only eating 80% until you're 80% full. I think that's a really nice message that stuck with me. And I thought about it a lot ever since between these 2 weeks. So that's a big one for me. And also eating with chopsticks. I like that. So those are my two takeaways. How about you?
I really remember, and it's important that, to have and build community and have lifelong friends. This is what they do in Okinawa so well. And it's probably the not so secret recipe for a long, healthy life. And then the other thing I like, Nari, is this built-in physical activity they do. They get up 30, 35 times a day, sit down, drink tea, get up, get down, get up. And that's, as an athletic director, I will tell you, that's pretty good exercise. It also requires balance and planning, anticipatory planning. So I was really impressed with that. They have built-in physical activity. Well, look, farewell to Okinawa. All of you by now should have received a postcard from Nairi and myself. That looked something like this. So you just want to go over it a little bit, Nairi?
Yeah, for sure. So our postcard, I hope that you're all getting them, and I hope that you all enjoy it. It's just really a quick recap, tidbits to take away from where we were. So the things that we want to bring home, some of the souvenirs from Okinawa are: food is medicine. That's how we should be looking at it. That is what's going to help us. And their special saying, hara hachibu, eat only until you're 80% full. And then, of course, the whole idea about purpose, living with purpose, really makes a difference in life. Green tea, companionship, and chopsticks. So here's to long and healthy life, So sayonara to Okinawa and hello to Costa Rica.
Yep, sayonara to Okinawa. Okay, Nairi, as we sip our last tea, green tea from Okinawa, let's just remind our audience what a blue zone is. Do you wanna take a shot at that?
So the blue zones, I mean, that's why we're here right now. Because these are the places, these are the specific geographical locations in the world where people live the longest, but not only the longest as well as being healthy. So it's not just about age, it's about ability to do at that age and to feel healthy. So Sardinia, that was our first blue zone. And that was the first blue zone that was discovered. And that was when researchers, they found this place and they marked it on the map with a blue highlighter, hence the word blue zone, because since then everywhere else that they found who maintained those same statistics of longevity, health, were marked with a blue marker, and that is the way the blue zone term was created. So Eric and I thought that it would be great fun, but also meaningful to travel virtually, especially with this pandemic, to the 4 blue zones around the world. So we started in Sardinia, we traveled to Okinawa, and now we're off to Costa Rica. Right, Eric?
Yes, absolutely. Let's go, rock and roll.
But besides just being this antidote for cabin fever, there is a serious part of our discussion, which is, can we unpack these ingredients from those cultures and take them in and make them to help us live long and healthy lives? And what are those ingredients that we can bring home to us? Perhaps even making these minor changes to our lifestyles in order to incorporate them. For example, what do people eat? How do they live? What do they believe in? What music do they listen to? They should be careful of that last beat. You can get carried away with it. And most importantly, how can such knowledge then translate to us personally every day as we confront our own global pandemic? So this has been so exciting. I can't wait to set foot on Costa Rica. Eric, let's go.
All right, let's travel, Nairi, okay? We're out of our lounge, we're landing in Costa Rica, and of course, it's in Central America. Tourism right away is the biggest industry there, with about 2.9 million foreign tourists each year. That's a lot. And so Costa Rica, it's not an island, but it has water around it. And it's known as a stable democracy, Nairi. It's progressive in its social policies. It has compulsory public education. And here's something interesting. On December 1st, 1948, they abolished their military force. So the budget that was previously used for the military is now being used for low-income housing and education and healthcare services. So it's really an interesting place just right from the get-go. They're also one of the pioneers of ecotourism. And once, there's different ways to measure happiness, but on one of these indexes in the last decade, they ranked #1 as the most happiest country. So they're not only one of the countries where people live the longest, the most centenarians in the world among the 4 countries that we're covering, but also the fact that they're also happy. So they have a population of 5 million. It's actually called the Republic of Costa Rica. San Jose is the capital. They speak Spanish. The time zone is Central Standard Time. So maybe we have some alumni there that are actually watching. It's a small country, the 120th largest country in the world. There's about 180 countries, in case you wonder. And almost everybody lives to 90, and some people live to over 100. Now, when we decided we're going to do Costa Rica and Central America, I was kind of like skeptical. I went like, okay. And how's it possible that people live there so long, given that not only there's poverty, but in South America, there's a lot of corruption. So I looked this up, Nairi. This is the corruption perception index of the world. The darker the color, the more the corruption there is. So you see there's a really dark color in South America, and it happens to be Venezuela. In fact, Venezuela ranks 176th in the country, probably not a good place to do business. But guess what? Costa Rica is actually number 42, and the United States is 25, Italy is 52. Italy's 52. Japan, that we covered last 2 weeks ago, is 19. In 2 weeks, we're going to travel to Greece. That's 59. So it's basically the same as is America. You'll see the really light colors like Denmark and Finland. They're a little bit even better. And by the way, number one in the world in the corruption percentage index, the least corruption, probably, tied Denmark, Switzerland, and New Zealand. But here's an interesting point. Is that in these blue zones, Nairi, there's not a lot of corruption. In other words, if there's a lot of corruption in a country, the healthcare system doesn't work, schools don't work, and you also don't live as long. So it's a really interesting correlation. So I looked this up, and I thought it was interesting because I felt like, okay, we got that one crossed off. So Costa Rica is a really good place to do business. And when you think of Costa Rica, you think right away of the color green. Do you like, Nairi, do you like the color green?
Yeah.
Okay, and you also like the color blue because they have a lot of water. And if you go into Nicoya Peninsula, you'll see that it's actually almost like an island, just like Sardinia and Okinawa. So as we go around and we look at Nicoya and Costa Rica, it's clear that, my gosh, I mean, look, you're surrounded by beauty. I'm ready to. Quite frankly, I'm ready to do this a sabbatical right there. And you'll also see a lot of beauty and people and fruit, and of course food and people cooking. And you'll see people, selling their vegetables, and it's really a longevity hotspot. And one slogan they have there is Pura Vida, lifestyle, the good life. And so I'll turn it over to you, Nairi. I mean, we're talking really a lot about food, and like in any other places, you are what you eat. So why don't we do a deep dive on food, and let's see what's going on in Costa Rica. Do they eat a lot of meat?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't call them vegetarians or vegans, but they don't eat a lot of meat. But let's start with how they start their day, which I think is really important here. I saw some people in the chat room commenting. People have been to Costa Rica, so that's awesome. If you want to add anything in, please feel free. We would love it. So keep going with the chats. But one thing that I heard is that yes, whoever visited Costa Rica did eat rice and beans several times a day. And that's the way they start breakfast, a big breakfast. So like that motto, breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, dinner like a pauper. There is a wealth of scientific evidence that suggests that front loading these calories early in the day does support overall health and can reduce the risk factors for heart disease. So this is done naturally there, and breakfast is a very important meal, and it includes rice and beans, something that we in the United States are not used to as being a traditional breakfast, but really any food works for breakfast. It really just is food. It doesn't need to necessarily be categorized. So big breakfast. And who can pass up coffee? Nicoyans drink more coffee, loads of coffee, copious amounts of coffee. And research suggests that coffee drinking does decrease rates of dementia and Parkinson's disease. So, coffee is really important there. I have not tasted Costa Rican coffee. I know that people who are on this right now have, and I'd love to hear from you too, what this is and how fantastic it is. In fact, in Costa Rica, the coffee bean has been declared as the national symbol of Nicoya, the national symbol of Nicoya it has. So there's great love for the coffee bean, and there's scientific evidence to why you should be drinking coffee. Maybe some of the secret behind that is also with their water and the water that they use to make their coffee. So one of the secrets about Nicoya is really we want to focus on the sun and the sea, or the sun and water. And that is such a huge element of why people are healthy in Nicoya. We'll start with the sun. So on the sun perspective, the sun is important because, well, vitamin D is produced with sunlight where it's wherever skin is exposed. So vitamin D, this reduces the risk of stroke, diabetes, autoimmune diseases. I know that this is getting to maybe kind of dripping into diseases, but I just want you to know that there is reason behind why they live the longest and the healthiest, because they're very simple little things. And one happens to be just being in the sun. And so what we know about vitamin D also is that it helps you absorb calcium. So these Nicoyans, they probably have the strongest bones in the world, because not only do they have the access to vitamin D in sunlight, they also have water, tap water, that has the highest calcium content in the world. In fact, the amount of calcium that they find in a glass of water in the Nicoya tap water is more than that in a glass of milk. So here we have it. A lot of milk with a lot of calcium with a lot of vitamin D equals strong bones. So this is all just very important, because it's the basic foundation of the culture. Just living where you're living and eating in the morning because you wake up early and you're hungry, and you start the day off with what we have a term for, which is front loading, but really it's just natural cultural habit in Costa Rica. So the tap water, yeah, thank you, Eric, for changing that slide. So I just want to go over some of the traditional diet here. So some of the things that are just natural to the geographic area there, that is where they're pulling from. That's where the food is coming from. You know, the words we use here, farm to table. Well, I think in Nicoya we can call it ocean to table. And we're really that there's lots of fish, seafood that is incorporated into the meals that they eat. Papaya. Papaya is everywhere. And so papaya has a special enzyme in it that helps decrease inflammation. The black beans, which we're going to take a nice little dive into those black beans too. And then the plantains, the corn, the rice. So what I want you to take away from this traditional diet here is that if you take a look at this pie chart, whole grains and vegetables and the dairy together, they make up more than 40% of the diet. So that's where it's coming from. We're talking a lot of whole grains, lots of vegetables, and dairy products. And so the rest is just like we've talked about before, they're condiments, they're add-ons. Even in the next slide, you can see, even though it's still rice and beans and corn tortillas, it's just in a different form, but the same ingredients are always being served there all over and over again, because they're local ingredients and they're easy to get and they're available. So this is preservative free. This is not imported from across the country or across the globe. They're local foods, low in preservatives. And so the nutrient quality is really at its peak. Eric, didn't you ask me a question a little bit earlier today about beans?
Yeah, we were going through our slides, and I got to be honest with you, I've never cooked beans in my entire life. In fact, I told you, I asked you, like, if I go into Whole Foods, where do I buy them? What aisle are they in? Are they in veggies? Are they somewhere else? And then how do you prepare them? I mean, if there's such a secret source of nutrients, I want to go out tomorrow, and I as you know, I want to lead a long, happy, healthy life. I want to play golf until I'm 100. I want to shoot my age, right? Which means I got to hit like a 99 at that day. So please tell me about how to get these beans.
So beans, I think that's an excellent question. And it's something that I don't really think about all the time. I just kind of assume that people know about beans. So beans come in two forms. And so you're either going to buy them dried. And so you can see on this image here, these are a bunch of different types of beans. There are so many varieties of beans. Black beans, these are what we use here in the recipe that we have posted at the beginning of this session. but you could use any type of bean. So this slide shows you, you go to the dried area and there are tons of beans. But you think, what am I going to do with this bean, right? So that's why most people go with a canned bean. A canned bean because it's convenient. You really just take a can of beans, you rinse off whatever the beans are in, and then you use those rinsed beans into whatever recipe you're making. It's quick. It's 60 seconds from can to table, to be honest with you. So easy to do. But we can take this one step further. You can use dried beans. So there is a little bit of, recipe regimen that goes along with these dried beans, and it takes a little bit more time, but they do taste better. There's no sodium in it. And, it's a real better value. They're really very cheap. So what do you do with them? I'm going to give you the very quick and easy lowdown here. You bring home those dried beans. The first thing you have to do with dried beans is you need to soak them in a lot of water overnight, 8 hours minimum. So you dump them into water, you let them soak overnight, and then some beans will float to the top and a little bit of debris will. So, you rinse that off, you get rid of it. And now you're ready for phase 2. And phase 2 is now cooking those beans, kind of like the way you would cook rice, because you want to soften them. So you're going to put them into a pot again with water. You're going to maybe an inch or two above the top bean. You want to put, that would be your water level. Bring it to a boil, cover it with a lid, and let it simmer for about 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or until the bean is tender. And then voila, next slide, you have a bowl of beans ready to rock and roll. You can do whatever you want with it. You can mix it into another recipe. But that's the quick and easy way to use dried beans. So it's actually relaxing. I think that is part of the stress-free environment. What do you think?
Yeah, no question. I've been starting to cook a lot more, and I've been starting to garden as well. As you know, almost everybody has a garden in Costa Rica, and they grow all their local food. And so once you make the beans, it looks delicious. It looks like it deserves some rice, and like it has. And how long can you keep it? Like if you put it into a refrigerator, how do you heat it up again? Do you microwave it, or what do you do?
Yeah, so I think that depends on what you made out of it. But so if it were beans that were just going to go on rice, I'm telling you, this is what they do. What they do. You just keep it in the refrigerator for a week. In fact, the rice that is used with the gallo pinto is leftover rice. One of the times that I made the gallo pinto, I used my leftover rice from Chinese food the night before because I had it in the refrigerator. So that is how it's supposed to be used. So you are not wasting any food, and you can make it into a taco. You can make it into an enchilada or a fajita or just a meal of gallo pinto. Like you can really just transform these rice and beans to serve many different meals out of the same foods.
Nairi, when you cook like that, one of the things you do is you're controlling, what you're thinking about. And cooking, you have to be in the present, right? It's like a problem that you're trying to solve, and you have to be in the zone. You have to be mindful of what you're doing while you're cooking. And how much fun is it to cook with people together, right? And during COVID, people have been doing a lot of cooking over Zoom and sharing recipes. And one of the things about Costa Rica and really all the blue zones is they score so low on stress. We do have stress scales and that we can, as psychologists, measure how much stress our people are experiencing. And as you know, during COVID right now, we have a mental health crisis. It's almost anxiety has almost gone mainstream. We're all anxious. We're all sitting at home, sheltering up, and we're trying to figure out how to be less stressed. So what is it that these blue zones and the Costa Ricans, what do? They're mindful. They kind of stay in the present pretty much all the day, gardening, eating, sharing, getting along with people. Also, one thing that we can do and that we can borrow from the blue zones is to really only try to control what you can control, not to worry about things. that you can't really control, watching a lot of bad news on the news in the news TV broadcasts, but the idea that you really like focus on what's inside the circle of things that you can't control. And then they have this cautious optimism, and they're using a lot of creativity in their everyday life, which gives you a sort of a feeling of health and psychological health and cautious optimism. So, also they have some things that we do have, like alarm clocks. And so I feel like, it's hard. I mean, I always like to say people don't move there, but actually, Nairi, a lot of Americans have moved to Costa Rica because of this. And there's a lot of expatriates who are living in Costa Rica, and so that's part of this stress-free community that people really are attracted to. It's hard to replicate in America, but there's some little things that you can do, like I just told you, especially like focusing on the moment. And so what other things do they do as well? They spend a lot of time outside, like you say. In fact, all the blue zones, they spend time outside. So while we're sheltered, in cabin fever, make sure to spend an hour outside. Make sure to go for a walk. Make sure to go on a hike. It's so important. It resets our biological clock, our circadian rhythm. It orients us, we're not used to living in caves 24/7. They've done some research in France where they put somebody in a cave for 3 months. It was not a pretty sight. The person had no more sleep cycle. They didn't feel good about being down there, obviously. So we don't want to do that. We want to be outside. But a lot of these people who live in the South, they protect themselves from the sun. And do you know what this hat is called, Nairi?
Mm-mm.
It's called a Panama hat. So see, it's not a Costa Rica hat, but it's close, get it? So, so people wear hats and they shelter themselves from the sun. Ecotourism is a form of expending a vacation outside. It's something that people really have specialized in Costa Rica. They've been one of the pioneers of ecotourism. And then one idea about what I've learned is all the blue zones, and Costa Rica is really an expert on that. They're experts in building communities. They're really architects of how people get along with each other. It seems like everybody in Nicoya gets along with each other. They're social. They have social interactions. You mentioned coffee. I'm not going to talk too much about it today. I have Costa Rican coffee. It's very good. But it's also, besides food, it's also a social catalyst, right? People like to drink it together. Just look at the Starbucks culture we have in America. And I was going to talk in 2 weeks more about the coffee culture, because they really perfect the social coffee culture in Greece. But still, you drink coffee together, and the social interaction is really important. They really have a celebration, Nairi, of family, community. The people who are our neighbors, they're thought of as extended family. They talk to them. And this is so important. We know this not only in the blue zones, but really during COVID, because we're all kind of like sheltered, to reach out to your neighbors, to your community, and get to know them a little bit. And I've gotten in touch with the community I live in here called Old City, which I used to just pass through on my way to work. And it must be a healthy thing to do, to be grateful that you're around people and that you're part of a community that takes care of each other. And so that's a really important ingredient in long life and happiness. Well, there's something about family, Nairi, that is really important. I mean, do you have any particular feeling? I mean, you're a family person.
I think some of the things that they do includes respect for the elderly and maintaining family traditions, which I truly believe in both of those things. In fact, in my own family, this is one of the highest prioritized values, is respecting I don't want to say the elderly. I'd rather say like the head of the house, the greatest grandparent or great grandparent. That is the person that has earned the greatest respect. And though that means the family traditions, that's where they're hosted, and that's the person that is the one who gets to sit there and watch the room, and everybody knows, that person has earned their respect. And I think that's important. It really builds good character, even for kids to see this in generations and passed on to generations.
Yeah, I really like that thinking, Nari, the idea of to think across generations, because it does something really interesting to you psychologically. It makes you feel like you're bigger, you're part of something bigger. You're part of your ancestors who came before you, but you're also part of your future. And in many of these households, you actually live with the different generations, or they're in your community very close by. Also, the idea of thinking across generations and about sustainability and regeneration is the idea of how education is treated in Costa Rica, which it's very much fundamentally accepted. But the idea is not to is to educate people, and because they feel they can become better parents, they can become better workers and better people, and so there's education for both men and women. So they've really, I mean, across a lot of spectrums of like things that you can rank objectively, they score extremely high, which is really interesting. So this idea of maintaining strong and healthy relationships, and this idea to feel like you're part of something much bigger, uh, makes you feel grounded, which is really important. The opposite of that would be to be fragmented and feel alone and lonely and be in despair, which sounds awful. And of course it is awful. So this idea of social connectivity is an amazing ingredient for all of us here in the United States, and we have to figure out how to nurture that. There's different platforms we can use. In fact, I would even say the Drexel University Alumni Association is doing this right now. They're creating a community of alumni. It's great to be with all you dragons and all the friends out there. It's great to share some time with you, and we're looking forward to chatting with you in just a few minutes. So really, by studying the architecture of how they built these communities, I think we can learn a lot about ourselves as well. This idea of beauty, um, is just you're not going to go to a place where people live happy long lives and it's not pretty. And so the same was true for Sardinia and Okinawa, and it's certainly true for Nicoya. It's a little bit of a secret, Nairi, that they do a lot of gardening, and they walk a lot, and they walk to the places that they need to go to. And so this is all within walking distance, most of it. But they have a sport there, which is actually one of the best spots in the world to do what? Do you know what the sport is?
No.
No, you don't know this. It's a surf spot. They have one of the best surfing spots in the world. And in fact, I have a friend who has a house there, and he's a surfer. And so they go, and so they have great surfing. And so this is a surfing picture. Who do you think this is?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, you're.
I would have to say you, the man of the future.
I know. It's unbelievable. I do all these things. None of them I do well, but it's not Costa Rica. It's actually Cape Hatteras. You can tell by the color of the water. But this idea so it's become a really not so secret surf spot, Costa Rica, and you'll see a lot of surfers there as well. I was thinking, Nairi, to wrap it up here, maybe to talk a little bit about a summary, and give people a little bit of homework about what they can do. What souvenirs can they bring back from Costa Rica? And that's instead of bringing back like merchandise,
I change it in the middle one
what
day.
is it that it can bring back, and what lifestyle changes can they have? What do you think?
Well, I think that I'm gonna take a little break off of this for a second, because I see the chat room has so much interesting stuff going on it that I feel like I need to jump into there for a second. And it all goes back to food. The questions about food here are just fantastic, and everybody's suggestions are also just wonderful. You all have made me want to get a cup of coffee right now. Because you make it sound so delicious from some of your travels there. I know Andrea Irvin, who I work with. She's the dietitian for Drexel Athletics. She's been to Costa Rica and speaks, a lot about the coffee. She's a big coffee drinker. She also has 2 young kids, and they're all in the house together. So I think that could be a part of the coffee drinking. But besides that, yes, she loves the coffee, and I love hearing that. And then some of the other suggestions we got is, you asked about beans and how can you keep them? Well, it says, someone who wrote in here, I just saw it, you can freeze beans and they freeze very well. So I think that is a great tidbit of information for everybody to know. You can freeze beans and they they freeze very well. Another nice piece of advice that I see here, oh, some questions too. One piece of advice is about what type of spices you can add to the beans. So really you can turn beans into any flavorings. Think about the different soups that there are even with beans. So you can put garlic and onion and peppers into beans. You can keep it very mild, and you can make it creamy with a cream base to it. So there's a lot of things that you can do with these beans. And I love some of the things that people say. They freeze beautifully. I hear again, this is wonderful. Oh, for something unusual, I see here that someone wrote that you can add sauteed onions and a little bit of orange juice. Doesn't that sound so good? Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I really like that one, Sarah Wilson. Okay, I'm going to back up a little bit because I saw a couple of really great things here. Somebody did ask, is there any nutritional value in refried beans? Absolutely. All the same nutritional value that you would find in any of the other beans. So refried beans are great. No, you will have to check the can, okay? So you want to make sure that if you are concerned about sodium, read the side of the can. You want to keep it less than 300 milligrams of sodium per serving. And I'm sure that there is a low sodium option there, but refried beans, fantastic. And if you make them on your own, even better. Where do you find beans? I love this question. It makes so much sense because they're kind of hidden. They're in these little bags and they're in the rice aisle, but they're below the rice. They're like almost on the ground. And you think, why are these beans almost on the ground when they are like raised up in some countries? That's where when we walk in to the supermarket, we walk into cakes and we walk into breads. And I'm sure that in Costa Rica, you walk into beans, and in our supermarket, beans are nearly on the ground under the rice. You have to go searching for them. Excuse me, is there a dried bean in the house? So thank you for bringing that up. I think that's a great question, and it makes so much sense because they're hidden.
There's no question we've been brainwashed about beans, no?
Yeah, right. We've been brainwashed since we're kids, aren't we? Isn't there like a little rhyme that goes with beans that kind of makes everybody think they're gross when they grow up?
Yeah.
So yeah, from a very young age, we are taught to stay away from beans. So we are flipping the script here now, everybody. We are going back to the bean. All right. So I am going to hit up some of these lifestyle changes, and our homework is same thing we said last time. We're looking for small changes. We're not asking you to eat beans every single day, but what if you tried them? What if you tried this recipe? And I have to say, if you do try the recipe, you must try the Lozano sauce. It's a game changer. It changed everything. I put this out on my counter and my kids told me, ew, beans. Within 1 hour, all the beans were eaten. All the rice was gone. Everybody dove in to this big bowl of beans and rice, and the sauce they have asked for repeatedly. I made it from scratch. It is easy, and it is one of the best sauces I have ever tasted in my life. So that's something that you should take away from this. So little things, little steps. We're not looking for anybody to be perfect. There is no perfect, but little changes, big results.
Yeah, that's true about, obviously with the blue zones, it's not going to be one thing, right? Because otherwise we just package it and market it. It's going to be a lot of little things, and that's actually a fact. So if you just make a few lifestyle changes every day, it's going to have a big effect. And especially as we're dealing with COVID, we don't want to sit back and become a victim of the stress. We want to take action. We want to take care of ourselves. And so part of what that is to take care of yourself first physically. And that is to find out, can you do something more? Can you take a walk every day? Can you start learning how to relax by doing something like going online? I've started yoga, which I've never done before COVID. It's been amazing. It's been a gift to myself. And that's how I thought of so when you invest in yourself, it's like putting money into a bank and later you can take out a deposit. So do yourself a favor and just think of something physical that you can do for every day for the rest of the year. And for the community, it's been so important to reach out to others during COVID, especially. And it just let's use the Costa Ricans as a treasure of how they take care of each other. So just think about like who haven't you talked to? Who can you reach out to? Call somebody or get in contact with somebody every day, maybe that you wouldn't do routinely. And then just the idea that cognitively in Costa Rica, I feel like people are just going through life solving problems. So if they need to build a hospital, they build a hospital. They build a school, they build a school. They don't worry about big issues, geopolitically, so to speak. And that's really a positive way to deal with things in front of you, especially during a crisis like a pandemic. Think of it as a problem-solving activity, because then it doesn't feel like it's emotional or overwhelming. So let's go to Nairi. Let's go to what we've learned so far. I mean, we've covered Sardinia, we've covered Okinawa, now Costa Rica. Those are sort of the ingredients we've come up so far. And the first one is really striking. It seems like all of them, they're all islands. And in fact, it's not a secret. In 2 weeks, we're going to Nicoya, which is an island in the Aegean Sea in Greece. So what is it about an island and the fact that all these blue zones are tropical? I saw in the chat room a world famous climatologist and geologist, Dr. Jacobson. I don't know if you can go off mute, Dr. Jacobson from the University of Maine, one of the pioneers of global warming. Do you have an opinion of the geology of why these blue zones are on islands and they're in the south, they're not in the north?
Well, one thing I looked at when I saw the list, I thought, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was intrigued by this particular list because they all are obviously fabulous places, and we should all go there and spend as much time as possible, but especially this time of year. But I looked at their climate, and I think it's really an interesting point about this. They're not only islands and beautiful locations, the beauty is an important component itself for sure, I think, but they all have extremely moderate, pleasant climates. And virtually every one of them has a climate that ranges from about maybe mid 60s to low 80s in temperatures all year long. That's all they have to deal with. And I think that, it's always been interesting to me as somebody who's always lived in the north and has Scandinavian ancestors, that the challenges of living through cold winters are pretty significant. And in fact, people who live in the north always sort of assume that that's why they're better than everybody else, because they're so tough living through winters. But of course, that's a bunch of baloney. That it also causes alcoholism and all kinds of other problems. But what's interesting about this is that the reason we feel that way is because living through winter is a stress. It's not only not pleasant to go outside every day, but we have to plan. We have to do all kinds of things that make us get through safely the winter, whether it's driving around, being outside skiing or doing anything, or just anyway, making it through very cold weather like we have here in Maine. And I think that, this is just, this is a question really. Is there something about having no stress involved in your own environment that helps to make these people healthy and happy and live a long life? Do you think, Eric and Nairi, do you think that's could be an important component, or is the climate just a sort of a coincidence? That's sort of my question, I guess.
George, I think you're brilliant. Really, I think that what you're saying makes such great sense. And all of us, I'm sure, can imagine what we feel like in the summer, versus how we feel in the winter. And And you know, there's a reality to seasonal depression, and I think that Mr. Dr. George Jacobson, you nailed it.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, George, it's so good to see you. This is the great thing about this Zoom environment. We just got people popping in from all over the world. Well, look, this is the list we've come up with. You know, these blue zones, they're not super wealthy, but they're not poor. They're surrounded by beauty. They have built-in physical activity. Obviously, Nairi, food's super important, right? I mean, it's probably the most important thing. What do you think, food or the social connections people have?
I don't think that we can quantify it. I think that it's all very important and a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, good. And so these are the things. So then we'll stop here. You know, we're going to invite you to join us. When are we coming back, Nairi?
We're coming back in 2 weeks. I hope you all can make it. I see some new people here that I just want to say hi to. Diane, Coral, hi. I'll talk to you later about sugar and beans. And everybody, thanks so much for coming, everybody. We really hope we see you again. So this is our last one that's coming up, February 25th. It's a Thursday at 6 p.m. And it's Ikaria, Greece. And boy, it's one of my favorites. And it's going to be the end. So that we're going to really make this so special for all of us. So please join us. We're so excited. Send any tips that you have along the way. And in the meantime, visit wine.com to sample some wines from Greece. So that's one of the things that we're going to be having for the evening. And if you use the code Drexel10, you receive a 10% discount on your order. So I think that's a good draw, right, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely. Wine.com, they're one of my favorite providers. It's not, I'll warn you, it doesn't, there's all kinds of state rules and laws, so you may not be able to get what you want or maybe not get anything at all. In the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, there's no restrictions, and I ordered an entire case, 12 bottles of different wines from Greece, including Ikaria. So this is great. So yeah, I can't wait. One of my favorite places to travel to. And Nairi, yeah, I also want to make some shout outs. You know, first of all, you know, Fanny and Devin, who really have organized the Let's Travel series from the Alumni Relations Office at Drexel. You've been terrific. Thanks for organizing and putting the infrastructure on that. And I also saw in the participants that Cindy Leisman, also a Drexel University colleague, is on here, who is also working in a variety of ways, but also with alumni relations, and has been a Drexel grad as well, and she's been really a steadfast leader for all these alumni connections as well. So it's great to see you, Cindy. So look, let's do you want to do the chat room and see what's going on?
Yeah, well, you know, we're at the part of the chat room that everyone is just saying thank you. And boy, we thank you more than you can thank us. This has been so fantastic. I love the questions. And you know, everyone they like the video. They say that the rainy season, Linda, can cause some stress in Costa Rica. I'm sure that's part of it. Anyway, no new questions. All is good. Pura vida.
Yeah, so thank you. Anything else, Fanny?
Well, a couple of quick follow-up questions, Nairi, on beans. Somebody did ask, do you know, can you cook the beans in an Instapot without soaking them?
So I did read a recipe. I have not done this, but I did read a recipe that Instapot can be used for beans without soaking them. I don't know the details though. I'm not an Instapot professional here, but I heard that works. I have used the pressure cooker though, and that works just as well without having to soak. But I think soaking adds a different
is like
level.
a pressure cooker, so it's a similar cooking concept. Just read your either read your manuals or find like 1 or 2 recipes, and it'll walk you through the instructions.
Okay. And then there was somebody who asked a question about coffee, whether or not is there a recommended amount of coffee to keep in good health?
There is. Yeah, there is, even though lots of people surpass this amount. So to keep in good health, it is the recommended amount of coffee is based off of the caffeine. So different types of coffee have different amounts of caffeine. So based on a regular drip coffee, 8-ounce cup, 4 cups is recommended per day. So like when you go to Wawa and you get a 24-ounce cup of coffee, you're nearing the max. Starbucks coffee, for example, has a lot higher caffeine content than Dunkin' Donuts would have, for example. So it's not really the number of cups of coffee, it's the amount of caffeine. So you also have to take into consideration then what type of foods that you're eating that might also have caffeine.
Oh,
So
okay.
there is a maximum amount of caffeine. I mean, even NCAA athletes are tested for caffeine. There is a boundary of what you cannot go over, and if you it's like 15 milligrams in your blood, I think. Andrea, am I correct? And anyway, but it's in your blood, so you have to drink a lot of coffee in a short period of time, and it's really hard to hit that number without using caffeine supplements. Truly, it's just by drinking coffee, you're not going to be able to accumulate that much in your bloodstream because you are going to be flushing it out with fluids. So in general, the answer is, my very short answer is yes, 4 cups of 8-ounce coffees a day. That's the recommendation.
I have an opinion about that as a neuroscientist. You know, coffee is a stimulant and it crosses the brain blood barrier. So it goes into the brain, and half of your brain, if you think of your brain as like having all these rooms, like a hotel room, half of your rooms are doing excitatory work. They're doing stuff. The other one is saying, no, 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 they're inhibitory. So you're at war with yourself all the time in your brain. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. So when you put a stimulant into the brain, it just creates a little more yes. That's why you feel like you have more energy. And there's some studies that caffeine increases cognitive awareness and new problem solving. And we all know that when we drink, you know, for that purpose. The fatal dosage of coffee is 240 cups. So if you were to drink 240 cups of coffee, you probably, you know, I don't know what the fatal dosage is for water, but maybe less. So it's a toxin.
There is a fatal dose for water. It'll probably be around 2 gallons.
Yeah. So, but the point is, and Nairi can amplify this, in all these blue zones, when it comes to food or physical exercise or whatever they do it in
moderation.
That's right. And that's one thing we've learned from these blue zones, that really you can do anything, drink wine, drink coffee, but as long as you don't go crazy, you'll be fine. Do you agree with that, Nairi?
I do.
Eric, on that point, we actually have a question in the chat about Nicoyans spend a lot of time with partners outside of their marriage. Do you know how this would affect stress levels in families, or is it an accepted part of the culture?
Yeah.
I'll leave that to Eric.
I want to talk. I would talk about how you cook beans. That just seems like such an easier thing. You know, it's you know, I've been fascinated by Costa Rica. It's a liberal lifestyle. Let's call it that, right? And so it's not clear from the question, you know, whether it's a good question. It's an interesting question. It's not clear whether people move there to have that lifestyle or if it's cultural. But I'll tell you one thing on the blue zones, they're not preoccupied with marriage like some of us in America are. You know, I know people in their 20s and they just can't wait to get married. And I feel, I've grown up in Europe and we didn't have that. I mean, people do get married. They get married later at the age of 30, rather than maybe at the age of 25, like in America. But the idea of the focus on marriage and having a really intense relationship is much higher here than in the blue zone. It's more a romantic, they're focused on friendship and romantic involvement. So that's interesting. I think it would create stress as a psychologist, you know, yes. But I'd tell you what, I'd have to go there and study it. I mean, that's what we're going to do, right? We're going to go to all these places and do sabbaticals there. So it's a great question, but we know that they have a different perception about you know, marriage to begin with, in terms of just having it more as a friendship rather and more of a romantic relationship. Whereas I think in America, for some of us, it's like the end to everything, the end to like the beginning of happiness, the beginning of life, the beginning of everything. So that's a really good question. So what
further study is required?
Fanny, how we're doing? Good.
Doing great.
We're there. 7:57, Eric.
Yeah, I'll just leave everybody with this coffee thing. You know, I've started becoming a barista too. I've done all these videos, and when you make a cup of coffee and you measure the beans and you buy different coffee from different places in the world where the coffee really pulls up the soil, so you're drinking the soil of the earth of where you bought it from. It's another creative process during COVID, during the pandemic, that you can engage in. It's like cooking, you're preparing something, it's creative, you're in the moment, and then you can consume it. And it's just one of the most beautiful things in the world. And I've been putting some energy into it. So I hope I won't bore with people when Irene and I come back to Greece, because they've created a whole culture around coffee shops, coffee places where you can have coffee. So we can't wait to go to Greece.
My kind of coffee, the Greek coffee.
Yeah.
I'm excited for that.
Okay. Well, look, it's great seeing everybody. Nairi, Fanny, any last words?
No, we're just looking forward to part 4 of our, fourth stop in the Blue Zone tour. It's been wonderful to be able to go to these sunny destinations and, take a little bit of that into, especially in the Northeast where we're dealing with all the snow, this seemingly never ending news about snow. So I think it's been great.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's great to see how many people have gone to Costa Rica, and that's really
I'm feeling left out. I haven't.
yeah. And is there any way to copy the chat box? It's really interesting. We love all the suggestions about the coffee. That's really nice of everybody. Thank you.
I will check, but everybody on the list, everyone's on tonight. You'll be getting an email from me with obviously information on the next event coming up, which is on February 25th at 6 p.m. That's going to be Greece. I'll also include a recording of this particular event, and I'll try to include the recipes and the link again to the video of the rice and beans. And I think, Nairi, we did have one request for the Lozano, the salsa Lozano, is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's on the video, but if I just want to make sure I got the amounts right before I send it out tomorrow.
All right, I'll send it to you first.
Yeah. It looks delicious. Rice and beans is one of my favorites, so I can't complain. I love it.
Well, adios.
Adios.
Thank you everybody for attending tonight.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Adios.
Thank you.